Have you ever noticed how the most powerful people in the room are often the quietest? We live in a world where everyone is shouting to be heard, yet silence carries a strength that words can never match. Today, I want to take you on a journey to discover the secret power hidden in silence. Because silence is not weakness. Silence is clarity, silence is wisdom, and if we learn how to master it, silence becomes our greatest success strategy. Silence gives clarity because in the noise of the world, our mind is constantly occupied, running from one thought to another without ever stopping to pause. When we choose silence, even for a short while, something beautiful happens. Our thoughts settle like dust after a storm. In that stillness, we begin to see things as they really are. Often, when we rush to speak or decide in a hurry, we act out of confusion, impulse, or pressure. But silence removes that fog and brings perspective. It is in silence that we find the answers we were searching for, not in the chaos of endless chatter. Think about it: when we are quiet, we can actually hear our inner voice, the voice that is often drowned out by the constant noise around us. That inner voice guides us towards wiser choices and helps us understand what truly matters. Silence also gives us the ability to observe the situation calmly, to weigh the options before us, and to see beyond our emotions of the moment. Sometimes, one moment of silence can prevent years of regret because it helps us reflect before we react. It allows us to separate the essential from the non-essential, the truth from the illusion, and the lasting from the temporary. That is why silence is not emptiness, it is fullness. It is not weakness, it is wisdom. And when we practice silence in our lives, clarity becomes our natural strength. Through silence, we train our minds to respond thoughtfully instead of reacting impulsively. And in that clarity lies the seed of true success. Silence builds inner strength because it teaches us the discipline of self-control. In a world where people feel the constant need to respond, to prove themselves right, or to defend their ego, remaining silent requires immense power. It is far easier to speak back, argue, or retaliate than it is to hold one's tongue and maintain composure. True strength is not about overpowering others with words, but about mastering oneself. Silence is that mastery. When we practice silence, we train our emotions not to control us. Anger, frustration, and irritation often push us to say things we later regret. But when we choose silence, we give ourselves a buffer, a sacred space between the emotion and the reaction. That space allows us to regain control, and within that control lies inner strength. Think of a mighty tree standing firm in a storm. Its power is not in making noise, but in its rooted stillness. Similarly, when we are silent, we are deeply rooted within ourselves. We no longer feel the compulsion to prove our worth through constant talking. We no longer allow the noise of others to shake our peace. Instead, we become anchored, resilient, and steady. Silence builds a fortress inside us where our confidence is not dependent on others' validation, but on our own calm conviction. It is the silence that makes our words powerful when we do choose to speak, because people know they come from thoughtfulness, not impulse. That quiet strength becomes visible to others. They see the composure, the calm, the depth, and they sense the strength within. Silence does not mean suppression, it means transformation, transforming emotional impulses into inner stability, transforming chaos into balance. and transforming weakness into resilience. And the more we cultivate silence, the stronger we become, until silence itself becomes our shield, our strength, and our greatest source of power. Silence protects relationships because words, once spoken, cannot be taken back, and often it is in moments of anger or frustration that we say things that cut deeper than we ever intended. When emotions run high, our mind loses balance and our tongue becomes sharper than any weapon. A single harsh sentence can undo years of love and trust. But silence, in such moments, acts as a shield. When we choose silence instead of arguing, instead of throwing back insults, instead of adding more fuel to the fire, we protect the bond that matters to us. Silence does not mean weakness in a relationship. It means valuing peace over the temporary satisfaction of proving a point. It means realizing that winning an argument is not worth losing the connection you share. Silence gives time for tempers to cool down and allows space for both people to reflect. Many times, we realize later that the argument was not even about the issue we fought over, but about stress, tiredness, or unspoken pain. Had we spoken harshly in that heated moment, the damage might have been permanent. Silence, however, creates room for healing. It allows the heart to speak without words, because sometimes silence communicates more love, patience, and care than 1,000 spoken promises. When a person sees that you hold back your words out of respect for the relationship, it builds trust and admiration. Silence also teaches us to listen more than we speak, and in listening, we truly understand the needs and emotions of the other person. True intimacy grows not from endless talking, but from thoughtful presence, and silence nurtures that presence. It is in those pauses, in those unspoken moments, that relationships deepen. Silence saves us from the wounds of impulsive speech and preserves the beauty of connection. It reminds us that love is not proven in debates, but in understanding, patience, and restraint. Thus, silence becomes the quiet guardian of our most precious relationships, protecting them from the storms of anger and ego. Silence earns respect because in a world where everyone is eager to talk, the one who chooses to listen stands apart. People naturally pay attention to those who do not waste words because their speech carries the weight of thought and wisdom. When someone is silent, they are not empty, they are observing, absorbing, and reflecting. And that gives their eventual words a certain authority. We respect those who do not react impulsively, who do not feel the need to dominate every conversation, but instead hold back and speak only when it truly matters. Silence creates mystery, and mystery creates value. When people do not always know what you are thinking, they become curious. They pay closer attention when you finally choose to share. Those who talk constantly may be heard often, but their words lose impact. Those who speak rarely but thoughtfully are remembered for every sentence. Silence teaches us patience and humility. It shows that we do not always have to prove ourselves, defend ourselves, or display what we know. A silent person earns respect because they demonstrate control over their ego. They allow others to share their opinions fully, without interruption, which makes people feel valued and understood. That simple act of listening deeply is enough to command admiration. Respect is not demanded by loudness or authority. It is earned by presence, composure, and dignity. Silence radiates dignity. It conveys that you do not seek approval through noise, that you are confident enough to stand steady in calmness. Even in conflicts, the one who remains silent often appears stronger because they are not dragged down by arguments and emotions. People remember that restraint and respect it deeply. Leaders throughout history, saints, and wise thinkers have all practiced silence, and their silence gave their voices extraordinary power when they chose to speak. Silence earns respect because it is rare, and what is rare is precious. It reminds us that true strength does not need to be announced. It is silently recognized by all. Silence improves listening because when we are quiet, we create the space to truly hear what others are saying, not just their words, but also their emotions, their intentions, and the unspoken feelings behind their voice. Too often, when we are in a conversation, we do not listen to understand, we listen only to reply. Our mind is already preparing a response, already forming a counter argument, already waiting for the chance to speak. In that process, we miss the heart of what the other person is trying to share. But silence teaches us to hold back, to let go of the urge to dominate the conversation, and instead give our full attention. When we are silent, our ears open more, our eyes observe more, and our heart connects more. People can sense when they are truly being listened to, and that alone can make them feel valued and respected. Silence also sharpens our perception. When we stop speaking, we notice the pauses in someone's tone, the shift in their expression, the hesitation in their words, all of which reveal much more than what is spoken aloud. By listening in silence, we understand not just the surface message, but the deeper story. This kind of listening builds trust because people feel safe sharing themselves with someone who does not rush to interrupt or judge. Silence becomes a gift we offer to others, a gift of presence and attention. Moreover, silence helps us listen not only to others but also to life itself. In silence, we hear the subtle lessons that daily experiences try to teach us. We hear our conscience guiding us toward what is right. We hear our intuition, which is often drowned out by noise and distraction. In silence, we even hear the voice of nature, the calm of the breeze, the rhythm of the rain, the quiet wisdom of the world around us. This deeper listening brings wisdom, patience, and compassion. The ability to listen deeply is one of the rarest and most powerful qualities a person can have, and silence is the path to developing it. It allows us to go beyond hearing words and to truly connect with people's hearts. It transforms relationships, strengthens communication, and builds bridges where misunderstandings once stood. When we listen in silence, we learn more, we understand better, and we grow wiser. And in the end, the one who listens more than they speak is always the one who carries greater influence because they understand what others often overlook. Silence prevents regrets because so often in life it is the words we speak in haste that leave behind the deepest scars, not only on others but also on ourselves. When emotions rise, when anger burns, or when frustration clouds our mind, our tongue becomes faster than our wisdom. We say things without thinking, and once those words escape, they can never be taken back. Apologies may soften the blow, but they cannot erase the memory of what was spoken. Many relationships have been broken, many friendships have ended, and many opportunities have been lost because of words that were said in moments of weakness. Silence, however, gives us the chance to pause, to hold back, and to protect ourselves from creating wounds that later become sources of regret. When we practice silence, we insert a gap between our feelings and our response. That small gap has the power to save us from lifelong sorrow. In silence, we think before we speak, we reflect before we react, and we give wisdom the chance to rise above impulse. Imagine the number of times in your own life when you wished you had remained silent instead of responding too quickly. The truth is, very rarely do people regret being silent, but almost always they regret speaking too much or speaking too soon. Silence becomes the guardian of our dignity, ensuring that we do not betray ourselves through careless words. Beyond protecting us from emotional regrets, silence also prevents intellectual regrets. Sometimes, in the eagerness to appear knowledgeable or important, people rush to speak without fully understanding a situation. Later, they realize their words were unnecessary, shallow, or even wrong. But silence saves us from that embarrassment. It reminds us that we do not have to fill every moment with sound, that it is perfectly fine to say nothing until we are sure that what we say will add value. Silence is not ignorance. It is wisdom disguised as restraint. There is also a spiritual side to this. Silence is not only about avoiding mistakes, but also about cultivating peace. When we hold back words, we hold back conflict, and when conflict is avoided, harmony is preserved. Regret is born when harmony is destroyed, when peace is broken, when our speech harms others or ourselves. By practicing silence, we choose harmony over ego, peace over pride, and patience over impulse. That choice saves us from heavy hearts and sleepless nights, from replaying hurtful conversations in our minds again and again. In truth, silence is like a shield. It does not just protect others from our words, it protects us from the weight of future regret. It ensures that when we look back at our actions, we do not wish to undo them. It keeps our conscience light and our heart free from burdens. And when we finally do speak, our words come from thoughtfulness, kindness, and wisdom, leaving behind not regret, but respect and remembrance. Silence is a spiritual discipline because it takes us beyond the noise of the outer world and guides us into the stillness of the inner world. In silence, we encounter ourselves in the most honest way. The constant chatter of life, the voices of people, the demands of society, the distractions of technology, often drowns out the quiet voice within us. That inner voice, the voice of conscience and the soul, can only be heard when we are willing to sit in silence. Great saints, sages, and spiritual leaders throughout history understood this truth. They withdrew from the noise, they embraced solitude, and they discovered that in silence lies a direct connection to the divine. Silence is not just the absence of sound, it is the presence of something higher, a sacred space where wisdom and peace descend upon us. When we practice silence regularly, we purify the mind. Our thoughts, which are usually restless and scattered, begin to settle, just like muddy water clears when left undisturbed. In that clarity, we start to recognize the difference between the temporary and the eternal, between fleeting pleasures and lasting fulfillment. Silence becomes a mirror, showing us the true state of our heart and allowing us to confront our weaknesses and refine our strengths. Without silence, our spiritual life remains shallow, because prayer without silence is often only words, but prayer with silence becomes communion. Meditation, reflection, and contemplation are impossible without the discipline of silence. It is in silence that we become aware of the presence of God, not as a distant idea, but as a living reality within and around us. Silence also teaches humility. When we are silent, we acknowledge that we do not need to speak to prove our importance. We learn to surrender the ego that constantly wants attention and recognition. Silence bows the head, softens the heart, and makes us receptive to divine wisdom. It teaches us patience, reminding us that not every question needs an immediate answer, not every problem needs an instant solution. In silence, we learn to wait, and in waiting, we grow. Moreover, silence gives strength to endure life's trials. When pain, disappointment, or loss strikes, words often fail us, but silence carries us through. In those moments, silence is not emptiness, it is comfort. It allows us to draw from a deeper reservoir of faith. In silence, we find resilience because we are no longer relying on external validation or noisy distractions to soothe us. Instead, we lean into the quiet strength of our own spirit, guided by the presence of God. The discipline of silence is not easy. At first, silence can feel uncomfortable, even heavy, because we are so used to escaping into noise. But if we remain patient, silence slowly transforms from emptiness to richness, from loneliness to intimacy, from restlessness to peace. And once silence becomes a habit, it becomes our refuge, our sanctuary, and our greatest source of spiritual nourishment. It shapes us into calmer, wiser, and more compassionate human beings. Ultimately, silence as a spiritual discipline connects us with what is eternal, reminding us that the greatest truths in life are not shouted. They are whispered in stillness to the heart that dares to be silent. Silence increases focus because it removes the endless distractions that constantly pull our attention in different directions. In today's world, we are surrounded by noise, notifications on our phones, conversations in the background, television, social media, and the non-stop chatter of our own thoughts. All of this creates a scattered mind, jumping from one thing to another, unable to concentrate deeply on anything. But silence creates a different atmosphere. It is like clearing a messy desk so that only the most important work remains in front of you. When we enter silence, the clutter begins to fade, and the mind learns to channel its energy into one direction. That one pointed focus allows us to give our best to whatever we are doing. Without silence, even simple tasks feel heavy because our attention is divided. With silence, even difficult tasks feel lighter because our whole being is aligned. Silence allows us to engage in deep work where creativity and productivity thrive. Writers, thinkers, inventors, and leaders have always valued silence for this reason. When the world is quiet, the mind can travel deeper into thought, discovering solutions and ideas that do not arise in a noisy state. Silence makes us more present, more mindful, and more attentive. It sharpens our ability to notice details, to understand patterns, and to grasp what others often overlook. In silence, the wandering of the mind slows down, and focus becomes natural instead of forced. Silence is not just external, it is also internal. Even if the world outside is noisy, if we cultivate inner silence, we can still remain focused. This inner silence comes from training ourselves not to be pulled by every distraction, not to react to every thought that enters our mind. It is the discipline of returning again and again to the task at hand anchored in stillness. Athletes, musicians, and spiritual practitioners all understand this truth. Their greatest performance comes not from frantic energy, but from silent concentration, where the mind and body work as one. Focus gained through silence is also linked with peace. When the mind is quiet, it does not waste energy on unimportant things. All of that saved energy is directed toward meaningful action. That is why people who embrace silence often achieve more with less effort, because they are not drained by constant noise. Silence creates a rhythm of calmness that allows efficiency to flourish. It is in silence that our inner compass becomes clear, showing us what deserves our time and what is merely distraction. In the long run, silence builds the ability to stay centered even in chaos. When the world is loud, when situations are overwhelming, a person who has cultivated silence within can still remain focused, steady, and calm. This kind of focus is a superpower in a time where attention is scattered everywhere. Silence is the training ground where this power is developed. It transforms us into people who can give their full presence to whatever they choose, whether it is work, study, relationships, or prayer. And that undivided presence is the very essence of success. Because greatness is not achieved by doing many things at once, but by giving yourself completely to what matters most in each moment. Silence reduces conflicts, because many battles in life are fueled not by the depth of the problem itself, but by the words spoken in the heat of the moment. Most arguments escalate because people feel the need to answer back instantly, to prove they are right, or to defend their pride. But when both sides keep speaking louder, the problem grows bigger and bigger until it becomes almost impossible to resolve. Silence, however, interrupts this cycle. It is like pouring cool water on a burning fire. Instead of adding more fuel to the flames, silence allows the fire to die down. Choosing to remain quiet does not mean you are defeated. It means you are wise enough to see that some battles are not worth fighting with words. Silence often wins more than anger because it shows restraint, maturity, and the strength to control oneself when emotions are high. When you practice silence in conflict, you create space for reflection. You give yourself time to think clearly instead of reacting impulsively. You also give the other person a chance to calm down, because silence can dissolve tension faster than arguments ever could. Many times, when people shout, they are not actually looking for an answer, they are looking for release. If you respond with more shouting, the storm intensifies. But if you choose silence, the storm runs out of energy on its own. Later, when the emotions settle, real conversations can happen and solutions can be found with calmness rather than chaos. Silence also teaches us to choose which conflicts deserve our energy. Not every disagreement is worth entering. Sometimes, silence is the most powerful response because it protects our peace and prevents unnecessary drama. Walking away in silence is often harder than fighting back, but it shows a higher level of wisdom. It tells the other person that you value peace more than pride and harmony more than winning. This approach saves countless relationships and prevents wounds that could last for years. On a deeper level, silence in conflict transforms the energy of the situation. Instead of allowing anger to control the outcome, silence introduces patience and humility. It shifts the focus away from ego battles and towards understanding. In silence, We can ask ourselves, is this conflict about truth, or is it about my need to be right? Is it about solving a problem, or about feeding my pride? These questions lead to maturity, and maturity reduces conflicts before they even begin. History and wisdom both show us that silence has ended more wars than words. Great leaders have used silence as a tool to avoid unnecessary destruction, and ordinary people can do the same in daily life. Whether it is in family, friendships, or workplace situations, silence has the power to cool anger, protect relationships, and preserve peace. In the end, silence does not make us losers in conflict. It makes us peacemakers. And those who can create peace, rather than fuel conflict, are the ones who hold true strength. Silence reduces conflicts not by running away, but by rising above. It turns potential battles into opportunities for understanding and transforms what could have been destruction into a chance for growth. Silence speaks louder than words because it carries a power that words often fail to capture. Many times in life, the most profound messages are not communicated through speech, but through the quiet presence of a person. Think of a moment when someone simply sat beside you in your pain without saying anything. Their silence, filled with compassion and understanding, spoke volumes more than any words could. Silence has a language of its own, one that transcends cultures, backgrounds, and even emotions. It communicates calmness, dignity, strength, and sometimes even love in a way words struggle to do. Where words can be misunderstood or twisted, silence often reveals the depth of truth without confusion. When a person remains silent in the face of provocation, it sends a stronger message than angry words ever could. It shows self-control, discipline, and wisdom. When a person chooses silence instead of trying to prove themselves, it demonstrates confidence. Silence is never empty. It is full of meaning if we are sensitive enough to understand it. In fact, silence makes words more valuable. When someone who is usually silent speaks, people lean in to listen because they know those words are precious. Their silence beforehand gave weight to their speech. In this way, silence amplifies the voice when it finally chooses to be heard. Silence also communicates respect. In conversations, when we pause instead of interrupting, our silence says, "I value what you are saying." In disagreements, silence says, "Peace matters more to me than winning." In love, silence says, "I am present with you," even when words fall short. The beauty of silence is that it adapts to every situation. It can be strength in conflict, comfort in sorrow, reverence in worship, and attention in relationships. Words are powerful, but silence adds depth to them, just as pauses make music more beautiful than continuous sound. On a spiritual level, silence speaks even more profoundly. It tells the universe and the divine that we are listening. In prayer and meditation, silence is not about saying anything at all. It is about opening ourselves to receive. That quiet surrender speaks louder to God than thousands of words because it comes from humility and openness. The silence of the heart communicates sincerity, longing, and trust far beyond what language can contain. Even in the broader world, silence often leaves the strongest impact. When entire crowds observe a moment of silence, the weight of that silence shakes people more deeply than speeches. It conveys honor, memory, and reverence in a way no sentence could. In the same way, our personal silence can leave impressions that others never forget. They may forget what we said, but they will remember how we carried ourselves in silence, with strength, with grace, with wisdom. Silence speaks louder than words because it reveals the unseen. It shows the depth of character, the maturity of the soul, and the purity of intention. Where words fill the air, silence fills the heart. Where words may fade, silence lingers. And in many of life's most important moments, whether in grief, in love, in reflection, or in peace, it is silence that delivers the most powerful message of all. Silence speaks louder than words because it communicates a message that words can never capture. When you walk into a room and you carry silence within you, people feel your presence even before you speak. It is a form of energy that is not expressed through language, but through the calmness of your demeanor, the steadiness of your gaze, and the way you carry yourself without needing to prove anything. When someone shouts, they may be heard for a moment, but when someone remains silent with confidence, they are remembered far longer. Silence has the power to draw people closer because it sparks curiosity. People want to know what you are thinking, why you are composed, why you are not rushing to react. In relationships, silence can heal deep wounds because sometimes no explanation, no justification, no argument is as powerful as simply being there without words. When someone is grieving, they may not need 1,000 sentences. They may just need your silent presence. Silence can become an unspoken embrace, a form of comfort that reassures without speech. In leadership, silence creates authority because when a leader pauses before speaking, the weight of their words increases. The pause, the gap of silence, makes every sentence more valuable because people realize you are not just speaking to fill the air, you are speaking to deliver wisdom. Silence gives power to your words by separating the noise from the truth. Even in conflict, silence becomes a mighty weapon. When you refuse to respond to provocation, you rise above the level of those trying to pull you down. Silence tells the world that your energy is too precious to be wasted on arguments that don't matter. The greatest strength is not always in fighting back, but in choosing not to be disturbed at all. In the spiritual sense, silence connects us to the divine because only in stillness can we hear the whispers of wisdom that the noise of life usually hides. Silence is not emptiness, it is full of depth, of power, of meaning. To master silence is to master yourself, and when you master yourself, you influence the world around you without even opening your mouth. That is why silence speaks louder than words. It is not just an absence of sound, it is a presence of strength. Silence increases focus because when the world is full of noise, distractions, and endless demands for our attention, silence becomes the rarest and most powerful gift we can give to ourselves. Imagine a mind that is constantly flooded with voices, her notifications, conversations, and opinions. It is like a cluttered room where you cannot find anything important. But the moment silence steps in, it is like cleaning that room, removing the unnecessary items, and suddenly clarity appears. Silence allows the mind to settle, and when the mind settles, focus is born. In silence, you begin to separate what is urgent from what is truly important, and you start channeling your energy into the things that matter most. When we practice silence, we take control of our attention instead of letting the noise control us. Think about the times you have tried to study, plan, or pray in the middle of constant noise. Your attention was divided, your energy scattered, and your productivity weak. But when you step away into silence, even if only for a few minutes, it sharpens your ability to concentrate like a laser beam. Silence cuts off the outer noise so that the inner voice can be heard more clearly. That inner voice, which often gets lost in the chaos, guides us to make the right decisions and stay focused on the path of growth. Silence is not just about the absence of sound, it is about the presence of awareness. It creates a space where you can direct all your energy towards a single goal without being interrupted by every distraction that demands your attention. Athletes, musicians, writers, and leaders all testify to the power of silence in sharpening their focus. They withdraw from the noise of the world because they know that silence fuels their discipline. Just as a magnifying glass concentrates scattered sunlight into a powerful beam capable of igniting fire, silence gathers your scattered attention and ignites the fire of productivity and creativity within you. When you cultivate the habit of embracing silence, you train your mind to resist the urge of constant stimulation. You learn to resist the temptation of endless scrolling, meaningless chatter, and unnecessary arguments. In silence, you find the strength to say no to distractions and yes to growth. It becomes a practice of mental discipline, and with that discipline comes an extraordinary level of focus that allows you to complete tasks with excellence, achieve goals faster, and live with a sense of balance and purpose. True focus is not just working harder, it is working deeper. And silence is the secret that unlocks that depth. When silence enters your life, your focus sharpens, your vision clears, and your energy flows in the right direction. It is in silence that great ideas are born, solutions are discovered, and success is shaped. If you want to increase your focus, learn to honor silence, not as emptiness, but as the fertile ground where the seeds of success quietly grow.